Hello everybody, this is Cap Coldblood, but most of you watching this know me as IC2598 Rook, a member of the hashtag Sith Lives Matter Guild in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, the IC standing for Imperial Commando, if you didn't know. Now, as my name suggests, I'm a huge fan of the Empire in this game, and that data has actually come up in extreme relevance with the recent actions of our guild. Now, because I am in hashtag Sith Lives Matter, I am making this video specifically for them. If you're not a member, then some of this won't apply to you, but for those of you that are within the guild, I have very important information for you that I believe can desperately help us in our territory battle, territory war, and Sith triumvirate raid viability. This is a problem I've noticed for about 2 weeks now, something that I feel needed to be addressed in a long and convoluted video. So I ask that you whip out your Galaxy of Heroes and read with me through this as we go down a list of the team that the guild really needs to farm, the Imperial Troopers. Now, the reason we need to farm this is twofold. We have the territory battles. When we get to the farther end of it, phases 4, 5, and 6, we start to lose viability because we can't fill the platoons that require Death Trooper, Snow Trooper, Storm Trooper. Some of the really good abilities require these dark side characters that we need to invest in for the future, especially for the Sith Triumvirate raid. Death Trooper is one of the best tunes for that raid. Second is territory wars. Now, I've noticed it for a little while now. As Night Sisters have been reworked, the territory war wall has switched from Phoenix to Night Sister in some cases. If people have a geared up Night Sister team, they will form a Night Sister wall, which is an entire platoon filled with just Night Sister lead teams of either Talzin or Asajj Ventress. Now, I have seen a lot of them with Gear 12, and I've seen a lot of them without Gear 12. But one of them had 11 battles against them without a single kill. All protection was gone, but there was not a single kill on the Night Sisters, and they'd been fought 11 times. I actually went against that team with my troopers. I won in literally 10 seconds. I watched the timer, not on auto, and I killed them in 10 seconds. Now, that is the reason we need this Imperial Troopers team, and you need to save it for offense in territory wars and save it for territory battles, because this team is adept at taking on teams in territory battles and the Night Sisters in territory wars. As many of you know, Night Sister Zombie recently got a rework, and the Night Sisters are now more powerful than ever in PvP when Traya, Bastila, all the big CLS teams are not a problem anymore, therefore making an effective back line, a second line of defense in territory wars. Our guild needs to be able to crush these teams. I will be going through a detailed description of each Imperial Trooper, and I will be giving you what is great about them, as well as my own personal recommended mods. Now, I'm not going to go for maximum speed here, but we're going to go with ones that are that maintain durability or damage, depending on what they have. So as I said, please pull out your Galaxy of Heroes, and please switch your focus to the first character and the most important character on this team, General Veers. Let's look at General Veers' basic called Daring Attack. This is assumed that you have an ability fully upgraded on all of these characters. I will explain if you don't need it fully upgraded, but this requires an Omega. Deal physical damage to target enemy with a 70% chance to grant speed up for 2 turns to General Veers and a random Imperial Trooper ally who doesn't have it. This sounds like a pretty decent attack. It does very good damage. I've seen it do upwards of 22,000 damage at Gear 9. It is a very, very good ability, as well as granting speed up to the team. Speed up is a great buff to have, especially on Imperial Troopers. Now, let's move to a special, Ruthless Assault, probably one of the best abilities available to the Imperial Troopers. Deal special damage to all enemies with a 55% chance of inflicting ability block for 1 turn, dealing 10% more damage for each living rebel enemy. Call all other Imperial Trooper allies to assist, dealing 40% less damage. Now, this is an amazing ability for taking out a weakened character or for bashing down the health of a weaker character, such as a low-geared zombie or a acolyte, someone that doesn't have the most health, or even if someone that is tanky like Daka or Talzin, really laying the hurt on them. And as we go through these abilities, you'll see the basics of the Imperial Troopers can apply a variety of debuffs. So laying 4 or 5 debuffs on the enemy at a time is very, very good using this multi-attack. This is completely wiped out even Raid Han at Gear 12 in a single shot, mainly because he's a rebel. Now, His leader ability, which is a very good one for the troopers to have, Imperial Assault Commander. Empire allies gain 30% offense. Imperial Trooper allies gain 20 speed and gain 10% turn meter whenever they gain a buff. So, as we'll go through in the unique ability, I'll explain the whole turn meter train for the Imperial Troopers when we get there. But on his basic, if he applies speed up to anybody, they get a buff, which means they gain 10% turn meter. Also, gaining all of this bonus turn meter, the Imperial Troopers thrive off of buffs. When they get tons of buffs, of course, they gain turn meter, which gives them an advantage in going first and going faster and faster and faster. So, this little bit of turn meter boost is quintessential for the Imperial Troopers. The worst thing that can happen to an Imperial Troopers team is to get mass dazed. Fortunately, there is not a single Night Sister that can daze anyone on your team, so this mechanic is always available to you when playing with the Imperial Troopers versus the Night Sisters. Now, his unique ability, Aggressive Tactician. This is the only Zeta that you absolutely have to have for Imperial Troopers to work, or else it's a coin flip as to whether or not you're going to get the bonuses, which are listed here. Whenever an enemy is defeated while Veers is active, if he dies, you lose. Imperial Trooper allies gain offense up for 2 turns, gain 50% turn meter, and recover 10% protection. While Veers is active, Imperial Trooper allies have 15% critical chance. Now, this turn meter gain, 50% turn meter plus offense up gains another 10% turn meter, and the 10% protection. Now, I'm going to go through Snow Trooper later, and he's going to help out with this turn meter gain, but let me just explain this to you if you maybe don't have Snow Trooper. I'll be explaining the optimal lineup that I have here, but let's start without Snow Trooper. You gain 60% turn meter when an enemy is defeated. Since we're against Night Sister teams, and Night Sister Zombie is probably above Gear 10 at this point, that character is immediately revived, and Night Sister Zombie is defeated in place. So you kill one character, and technically you kill Zombie. That is 120% turn meter and offense up, as well as a boost of 20% protection recovery. This is tide turning in Territory Wars. Your entire team gets the next turn no matter what. It is incredible, especially if that was Acolyte or Asajj Ventress, because they don't recover protection. And Veers has his mass attack ready. This starts a turn meter train worse than Palpatine in Arena. This is an amazing train, but the problem is getting the first kill. You always have to get the first kill with this team, and you have to keep Veers alive, or else none of these bonuses apply. Recommended mods for Veers are critical chance and critical damage with potency if you can spare it. Now, the ability block is a nice thing. It doesn't have to stick, but it's very nice if it does, especially if it's a mass ability block. But critical chance and critical damage ensure that Veers will be doing upwards of 20,000 damage every single time he hits with his basic. Now, let's move to your tank. I will not be using Shore Trooper. If you have Shore Trooper, great. He is superior to Stormtrooper in some ways, but for this lineup against Night Sisters, Stormtrooper is millions of times better for several reasons that I will explain. Let's start with his basic. Imperial Marksmanship. This requires an Omega to be the most viable. Deal physical damage to target enemy. This attack has high damage variance. If this attack does not score a critical hit or is evaded, the target becomes exposed, which cannot be resisted. This is wonderful for dealing bonus damage to a target. I've seen Stormtrooper hit for as little as 1,500 damage, but it exposes the target enemy, leaving them open for attack and just absolute devastation. Now, my favorite phrase in Stormtrooper's kit is this in the basic. This attack has high damage variance. As I've already stated, it can do 1,500 on a basic non-critical hit, or it can do upwards of 30,000 regularly on a critical hit with offense up. This is a tank hitting for 20 to 30,000 damage on a basic. This is insane, and what makes Stormtrooper incredible for this lineup. Few Night Sisters can withstand a 20 to 30k hit from a tank, not even your primary attacker. This is incredible, and you can tell I'm really hyped up about it because Stormtrooper is not only the most durable tank in the Empire, aside from Shore Trooper, as well as having bonus turn meter removal, he does mass damage, something that almost no other tank can do. Now, let's move on to his unique, which makes him even more ridiculously beefy. Wall of Stormtroopers. Before we get into this, Do not Zeta this ability. If you Zeta Wall of Stormtroopers, I will reach through the phone and slap you. You're an idiot for Zetaing this ability. Stormtrooper gains 40% defense for each living Empire ally, and while Stormtrooper is active, Imperial Troopers have plus 30% defense. So, Death Trooper, Veers, the more squishy characters like Snow Trooper, they gain a little bit of extra defense, 30%, and with mods you can boost this even higher. It's a very good unique, and for Stormtrooper, he gains 160% defense. Now, the recommended mods for Stormtrooper, because of all of this, is potency or defense. However, you're asking, why potency? The expose on evade can't be resisted. Why do we need potency? Well, I saved the best for last. His special as well as his taunt. Stormtrooper Bravado. Taunt for 3 turns, and grant Empire allies defense up for 3 turns, so a bonus 50% defense is even more. In addition, Stormtrooper removes 10% turn meter from each enemy whenever he is damaged while taunting. This counts for Plague. This counts for every single hit. Assume Stormtrooper had 5 damage over times on him and he started his turn. He could theoretically he can remove 50% turn meter from the enemy team. If he has 4 or 5 Plague on him, which is a very bad situation, he'll knock half the enemy's turn meter off. This, however, can be resisted, so a few potency mods, maybe one mod that boosts his potency by about 24% would be really good for Stormtrooper, but you want health, you want protection, you want defense. My Stormtrooper is over 26k health and 50k protection at gear 11. He's really strong, he can take a lot of punishment, and with a lot of help, Stormtrooper can last the entire battle and continue to do high damage or expose the enemy. So, let's move on to your utility belt on the team, Death Trooper. If the Imperial Troopers were Batman, then the Death Trooper would be the utility belt because he has all the nice toys. His basic attack is called Track Down. Deal physical damage to target enemy with a 70% chance to inflict daze for 3 turns. If the target was already dazed, stun them for 1 turn. If the target was a rebel, attack again. Now, territory battle is good here. This is why it's meant for territory battles, but since we're focusing on Night Sisters, let's stay there. Dazing Asajj Ventress or Old Daka, or even Talzin and Acolyte, preventing Acolyte from hitting twice, preventing Asajj from gaining the bonus turn meter, Daka from gaining 50% turn meter when a Night Sister is killed. This is beautiful, especially if it lands and the target already has daze in the first place. It is absolutely perfect for dealing with Night Sisters, especially, like I said, Daka and Asajj, 2 most important characters to daze. Now, his special, Death Trooper Grenade. This is an AoE attack, and before I say anything, this deals like 2,000 damage. I wouldn't trust it to kill an enemy with 5% health left, but it has some amazing utility. Deal physical damage to all enemies and dispel all buffs on them with a 70% chance to inflict healing immunity for 2 turns. Enemies who are not buffed will have their cooldowns increased by 1. Only Darth Nihilus can do this ability where it's an irresistible ability block, assuming they don't evade this attack. Anybody without buffs, which will be the majority of the match for Night Sisters, they won't have any buffs on them, which means if your Death Trooper is fast enough and can go first, the entire Night Sister team will start with their cooldowns increased by 1, giving you a massive advantage, forcing them to use basics. Now, as I said, this can be evaded. Also, it has a 70% chance to inflict healing immunity. If you can get this on anyone, then Old Daka's heal will be useless. Asajj's heal will be useless, at least for her. And then Night Sister Zombie's heal, which is on feed now, 20% of her max health, will absolutely be useless, as well as Spirit Blade Assault, just in case Talzin defeats one of your toons. They won't get all of that health. So, let's move to his second special, Terminate. This is my favorite ability in the game, and I'll show you why. Deal physical damage to target enemy. If the target is suffering any debuffs, this attack is a guaranteed critical hit. If there are any defeated enemies, also inflict death mark for 2 turns, which can't be resisted. Targets defeated by Terminate can't be revived. So, this attack can hit for over 35,000 on a critical hit with the right conditions. For example, offense up and a debuff on the enemy. 35,000 is very decent damage. However, This is an ability you want to use after an opponent has been defeated because of the special debuff only available to Death Trooper and the Gamorrean Captain from the Heroic Rancor raid, Deathmark. Now, for those of you that have not been wasted by Deathmark in the past, let me explain to you what it does. Deathmark. All allies must target this enemy. It forces that enemy to taunt. Target takes damage equal to 50% of its max health when damaged. This target cannot be revived. So essentially, you are making that specific enemy taunt, assuming they don't evade. You are doing 50% of their max health damage every time you hit them, and they cannot be revived. This kills Night Sister teams, especially Daka, and under Talzin lead, this does not allow her kit to call an enemy back, to call an ally back from the dead to assist and then die off every time. I will explain how that factors in later, but Terminate is to be used after you kill a specific Night Sister enemy. Now, I will say this. It does not kill Zombie permanently. Terminate does not prevent her from reviving, and if Zombie dies and then revives, Deathmark will not be applied because there's still technically 5 enemies on the field. So use this once you've killed Acolyte, Asajj, Talzin, Daka, any of them except Zombie. Now, his unique ability has much less viability. It's only for Director Krennic, so I'll skip right to the part that's good for Imperial Troopers. While Death Trooper is active, Imperial Trooper allies have 10% health steal. This is nice. This is good for high damage dealing tunes, for really cranking out the extra damage and getting a little bit of healing. This is really the only way for Imperial Troopers to heal themselves unless you have Shore Trooper. But because this is a quote-unquote poor man's list, I'm not really including Shore Trooper because he is a high-end hard battle farm. I'm not going to waste my time with Shore Trooper, at least not for now. If you have him, great, but like I said, I recommend Stormtrooper for Night Sister teams. Now, his recommended mods for Death Trooper, let's start with Potency is a good place to start. Let's do Potency as a secondary, and let's stay safe with Potency. His debuffs have to stick. Healing immunity has to stick with the Death Trooper grenade. Daze has to stick. The stuns from Daze has to stick. If any of those are resisted, I'm not going to say you're going to lose the battle, but it's severely disappointing when Death Trooper cannot land debuffs. Now, he is squishy as well, so loading him up with protection and health mods would also be recommended, but make sure you have some potency. I personally have over 80% potency on my Death Trooper. It is very good. He rarely gets a debuff resisted, and it helps the team out a lot. So, let's move on to your primary damage dealer and the anti-Night Sister god, Snow Trooper. Now, he is a bit squishy, so you're going to have to bear with me here. He's very good for territory battles, and his AoE is incredible, as some of you guys already know. His basic is called Assault Shock Troops. Deal physical damage to target enemy with a 50% chance to inflict ability block for 1 turn. This is a basic ability. It's nice, it's short, it's sweet. The ability block is one of those where it's like, oh, it happened, okay. Oh, it didn't, okay. It can deal over 20,000 on a basic, very decent damage, especially for an attacker. He's also pretty fast, so having Snow Trooper around will really benefit you. Now, his special ability is what makes him truly special. Overwhelming Assault. Deal physical damage to all enemies and gain critical damage up for 2 turns. For each critical hit scored, reduce the cooldown of this ability by 1. Now, this attack can deal over 17 to 18,000 damage per tune on a critical hit with critical damage up and offense up. And, as I said, this has a cooldown of 3. So if you hit the entire team and 3 of the enemies at least are critically hit, you get to do this again. I literally, in that Night Sister squad where there were 11 people, I did the AoE, took out Zombie once, did the AoE again, and the entire team was gone. That's how I beat it in 10 seconds with Snow Troopers AoE. Overwhelming Assault. It is an incredible ability. It really does help out in territory battles and here in territory wars against Night Sister teams. This does require an Omega. This is the most important Omega for Imperial Troopers. You have to get this. So, let's move on to his unique, which further amplifies Veer's actual leader ability and unique ability. Assault Training. Snow Trooper gains 30% turn meter whenever any unit is defeated, and other Empire allies gain half that amount. While Snow Trooper is active, Imperial Trooper allies have plus 20% critical damage. Now, this will help boost the damage of your team, but let's do a number crunch real quick. No, not on R2-D2. Veers kills an enemy. Somebody kills an enemy. 50% turn meter from Veers. 10% turn meter from the offense up, and a further 15% turn meter from Snow Trooper. That's 75% turn meter, and bonus 15% for Snow Trooper, so that's 90% turn meter when a toon is defeated. This is insane for your team. If Snow Trooper is in there, you're not just gaining 60%, you're gaining 75%. It doesn't seem like much a difference, but from my personal experience, Snow Trooper is a must-have for the troopers because that bonus turn meter he gets and the bonus turn meter he gives to everyone else is quintessential to making sure your team goes faster and faster and faster. You have to get the pain train going, and you got to break the brakes. You got to make sure that you can keep attacking over and over without taking too much damage yourself and call in the Stormtrooper for backup. So, the recommended mods for Snow Trooper are critical damage, critical chance, as much as you can get. If you have critical damage mods with the primaries crit damage, you need to apply those because the more damage he does, the faster your team can go, the more deadly your team will be, especially against Night Sisters, which is what our focus is today. Now, these next two characters are optional. They are Magma Trooper and Colonel Stark. Now, I've had Colonel Stark for much less time than I have had Magma Trooper, but I will explain the benefits of both before going in depth. We'll start with Magma Trooper, but Magma Trooper is an attacker. His basic is highly useful. His AoE removes tons of turn meter and ignores armor, and his unique ability helps fight off Plague from the Night Sisters. He is extremely tanky for an attacker and will last longer than Stark. However, Stark does decent damage on some of his abilities, focuses on giving the Imperial Troopers buffs, is faster than Magma Trooper, and will help your team overall do more damage. Stark is squishier, but he helps the team out more in his role as a support. Now, as for who I prefer more, Magma Trooper for more damage and for being tankier as well as extremely high tenacity, which is important against Night Sister teams. But if you have Stark, I encourage you to try him out, use him. I'm not going to say you shouldn't use Stark. I got him to 7 stars recently. I'm going to use him because I paid through the nose to farm him. So, let's start with Magma Trooper. Basic, Line of Fire, one of my favorite abilities in the Troopers. Deal physical damage to target enemy and deal damage to random enemy. The secondary attack deals 20% less damage. This can hit the same toon twice, or it can hit another toon at random. Now, oddly enough, the second shot seems to magnetize towards a weak enemy, the same enemy, or an enemy with expose on it. I have no idea why, but most of the time it hits that debuffed enemy, or it hits that enemy with weak health, and we're lucky. But if it hits the same enemy twice and double crits, this can deal over 25,000 damage on a basic. And it is incredible. Now, his special, Thermal Imploder. If you played Battlefront 2015, this is going to be a loving ability you love. Thermal Imploder. Deal physical damage to all enemies and remove 30% turn meter. That's guaranteed. With a 70% chance to remove another 30% turn meter, so possible 60% turn meter reduction. This attack ignores armor. Asajj, Daka, and Night Sister Zombie, those with high armor, will not matter here. It will deal around 4,000 to 5,000 to them. It is a very potent attack to use right at the start of the battle. His unique is actually rather good. Hazard Training. Magma Trooper has plus 30% tenacity and gains 70% turn meter the first time he resists a detrimental effect or suffers a debuff each turn. While Magma Trooper is active, Imperial Trooper allies have plus 30% tenacity. This really helps against Night Sisters with Plague, as I keep saying. So, let's assume that Talzin attempts to use her magic and start Plague going around. If Magma Trooper gets Plague or resists it, boom, 70% turn meter. He gets hit with 2 Plague, boom, 100% turn meter. If Talzin goes first, as is usual for these teams, Magma Trooper will get full turn meter. He will use a Thermal Imploder and wipe out the enemy team's turn meter, giving you a huge advantage at the beginning of the battle. This guy is incredible for troopers against Night Sister teams because of the tenacity and because of his ability to control the battlefield with Line of Fire and with Thermal Imploder. I highly recommend him. He's a galactic war farm. He's super tanky. He does great damage. Just go ahead and get him and have him at like Gear 9 or Gear 10. I beg you, because he's a great toon and underappreciated. So, for all those of you that suffered through the farm to get Colonel Stark, Here's your time to shine. Colonel Stark, his basic attack called Debilitating Shot. Deal physical damage to target enemy and inflict defense down for 2 turns. If the target was debuffed, deal double damage. Now, I've seen this do 8,000 damage, 9,000 damage, not modded for critical damage or chance or anything. But it's an okay ability. It really is. Defense down is a good debuff to have on Night Sister Zombie, Night Sister Acolyte, any of them really. It's good to help bash through their defense. Now, his first special, Scan All Wavelengths. Empire allies gain critical chance up and critical damage up for 3 turns. Stark gains 5% turn meter for each Empire ally and each Rebel enemy. So again, let's do a little bit of a number crunch. Stark usually can go first on your team. He's usually the fastest naturally. He gives them critical chance up and critical damage up to everybody, which is a huge boost. Like huge, I can't stress enough, huge boost. And a bonus 20% turn meter as well. Stark himself will gain 20% turn meter from the troopers in your team, as well as a further 20% from the buffs he gets. So, 40% turn meter for Stark, 20% turn meter for the rest of your team, and crit damage up and chance up. Just make sure Asajj doesn't clear this first. That's very important. Now, his second special, the highest damage dealing attack in his kit. Blizzard 4 Barrage. Deal physical damage to all enemies with a 50% chance to stagger them. Dispel all buffs on primary target. For each active Imperial Trooper ally, deal 10% more damage and reduce the cooldown of this ability by 1. Its cooldown normally is 8, however, this will reduce it to about 3 or 2, depending on the stipulations of the battle. Now, staggering an enemy, if you hit them once, it reduces their turn meter completely. They lose 100% turn meter when they get hit. If Snow Trooper goes immediately afterwards, this can turn the tide of the battle completely in your favor. So it also does pretty decent damage for an AoE, especially with the crit damage and crit chance up. 8 to 10,000 on an AoE is actually rather decent for Stark, so he does have some viability in damage dealing. His unique ability is pretty useless except for what he grants other trooper allies. Imperial Intelligence. At the end of his turn, Stark recovers 7% health. While Stark is active, Imperial Trooper allies have plus 50 armor penetration. Now, some of you notice there is a Zeta on this ability. Do not Zeta this ability. He gains 3% protection and removes 10% turn meter from the enemy team at the end of his turn, if used in this lineup. Please don't Zeta this ability. Don't make me slap you for a second Zeta that you wasted, especially on Stark, who is a subpar toon in my opinion, but I know he's good from other people telling me so and from personal testing. So, as I've said, the core team you need for this entire Night Sister crushing team: Veer's lead, Snow Trooper, Death Trooper, Storm Trooper. Then you can swap out Magma Trooper or Stark. Now, as I've said, Stark and Magma Trooper both have their uses. Magma Trooper is a safer bet because he is tankier, does more damage, and has turn meter removal as well as bonus tenacity for your troopers. Stark has bonus buffs that can boost your team. So if you are confident in your team's viability, then you can go with Stark and get massive damage boosts and hope to outrun the Night Sisters. Or you could take the more safe bet with Magma Trooper and remove their turn meter, give yourself tenacity, and really ensure that your team is more durable overall. Now, like I said, I like my Magma Trooper. I'm going to keep using him. He's at gear 10. My Stormtrooper's gear 11. My Veers and Death Trooper and Snow Trooper are all gear 10 as well. So this team, even at gear 8 or 9, can crush Night Sisters. Now, if you've made it this far, first off, thank you for taking the time to address this problem in the hashtag Sith Lives Matter Guild. This needs to stop. I am not angry at you for it, but I am sick of seeing Night Sister teams crush our guild. I don't want to see some Dathomir witches parade around the sands of Jakku while our Imperials just sit in the back, unfarmed and ungeared. Imperial might should be primarily our concern as our guild. Getting these troopers out will assist us in territory battles, the heroic Sith Triumvirate raid when we get to it, and it will greatly assist us in destroying enemy guilds in territory wars, especially if they're cowardly enough to use the Night Sister teams. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope I have convinced you to farm Imperial Troopers. The hardest farm is going to be Stark and Snow Trooper. I'm going to be honest with you. Snow Trooper, just open up the 1,000,001 Bronzium packs that you can to get the shards for him. He's a frequent drop in there. Magma Trooper's in Galactic War Store. Death Trooper's a high-end Cantina node character. Veers is a hard node character, double hard node, I believe. And Stormtrooper is also a Cantina node character. So, All of these characters will take time to farm, time to gear, and they will take several dozen Omega abilities. However, if we as a guild are able to band together and get these troopers, no one will ever be able to threaten us with a Night Sister wall ever again, and I can look around the burning battlefield with my Imperial Troopers all ready to crush all opposition and claim victory for the Galactic Empire. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.